The unearthed secret. The dusty mining colony on the remote planet Arcadia was not the kind of place where people expected miracles. Life on Arcadia was tough. Cold nights, scorching days, and endless tunnels dug into the planet's crust. The miners worked tirelessly, chipping away at the hard rock in search of precious minerals that kept humanity's far-flung colonies running. One such miner, Jake Carson, was just another man in a line of tired workers. He had a family back on Earth to support and dreams of one day leaving Arcadia behind. But on this particular day, something would change his life forever. It started as a normal shift. Jake and his team were drilling in Sector 7, a rarely explored area deep beneath the surface. The machines roared, and dust filled the air. Then suddenly, the drill hit something strange. Instead of rock, there was a loud metallic clang. The sound echoed through the tunnel, making everyone stop in their tracks. "What the hell was that?" one of the miners asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Jake stepped forward, curiosity sparking in his tired eyes. Only one way to find out. "Let's dig." The team switched to hand tools, carefully chipping away at the surrounding rock. It didn't take long before they uncovered a smooth metallic surface. It was like nothing they'd ever seen, perfectly crafted, with strange, glowing symbols etched into it. The material wasn't rusted or worn, despite being buried for who knows how long. "Is this a door?" Jake asked, running his hand over the surface. The glowing symbols pulsed faintly, almost as if they were alive. One of the miners backed away nervously. "I don't like this. It's not natural." But Jake couldn't look away. His hand pressed against one of the symbols, and to everyone's shock, the surface began to shift. With a low hum, the door slid open, revealing a hidden chamber inside. The air in the chamber was cold and still, untouched for centuries. As they shone their lights inside, the miners gasped. In the center of the room stood a figure, humanoid but clearly not human. It was encased in a crystalline material that shimmered like a frozen rainbow. The figure was tall, with angular features and a metallic sheen to its skin. Its eyes, closed and peaceful, hinted at something ancient and powerful. What is it?" one miner whispered, his voice barely audible. Jake stepped closer, his heart pounding. He noticed more of the strange symbols carved into the walls, glowing faintly in a rhythmic pattern. It was as if the chamber itself was alive, and the figure at the center was its heart. "It looks like a machine," Jake said, his voice trembling. "But it's shaped like a human." The discovery spread quickly. Within hours, scientists from the colony arrived, bringing advanced scanning equipment and a flood of questions. The chamber was sealed off, and the miners were ordered to leave. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something far greater than a simple artifact. As the scientists worked, they found more mysteries. The figure inside the crystal emitted faint energy readings, almost like a heartbeat. The symbols on the walls were analyzed, but no one could decipher their meaning. The leading scientist, Dr. Ilara Voss, was convinced that this was not a relic of human origin. This could be a weapon, she told her team, her voice filled with both awe and fear. But who created it, and why? Days turned into weeks as the team worked tirelessly to unlock the chamber's secrets. Strange things began to happen around the site. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Power surges swept through the colony, disrupting communication with nearby outposts. Some workers reported hearing faint whispers in the air, though no one else could hear them. Jake, unable to stay away, found himself returning to the chamber one night. The guards let him through. He was the one who found it, after all. As he stood before the crystal-encased figure, he felt a strange pull, as if it was calling to him. He placed his hand on the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint pulse of light emanated from the figure inside. Jake stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The figure's eyes flickered open for the briefest moment, glowing a deep, piercing blue, before returning to their dormant state. Jake ran from the chamber, his mind racing. Something inside him told him this was only the beginning. Back at the colony, Dr. Voss received an urgent message. The strange energy signals from the chamber had been detected far beyond Arcadia, reaching into deep space. Unknown ships were approaching the planet, their origins and intentions unclear. The miners had uncovered more than an artifact. They had awakened something ancient, something powerful. And now, the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The awakening. The crystal encasing the mysterious figure cracked with a sharp, echoing sound, sending shards scattering across the chamber floor. Alarms blared as the scientists scrambled to react. Jake, who had sneaked back to the site, watched in stunned silence from the shadows. The figure inside the crystal began to move. At first, its motions were slow, almost mechanical, like a machine waking after centuries of inactivity. Its metallic limbs stretched, releasing faint hisses of compressed air. Then its head tilted slightly, and its glowing blue eyes opened fully, casting an eerie light across the room. Dr. Ilara Voss froze, her hands trembling. "It's alive," she whispered. The humanoid figure stepped forward, its movements smooth yet precise. It scanned the room, its eyes locking onto each person present as if it were evaluating them. The scientists stood rooted to the spot, unsure whether to flee or observe. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep and resonant, with an almost musical quality. The words were unfamiliar, an alien language that filled the room with an unearthly cadence. Despite not understanding the language, everyone felt the weight of its meaning. This was not a greeting. "Translate that," Voss barked to her team. "We're trying," a technician stammered, frantically working at a console. The humanoid's gaze shifted to the glowing symbols on the walls, its expression unreadable. It raised one hand, and the symbols began to pulse in response, as if they were alive. The room grew brighter, the hum of energy intensifying. Jake felt the pull again, the strange connection he couldn't explain. Without thinking, he stepped forward. "Can you understand us?" he asked, his voice shaky but firm. The figure turned its glowing eyes to him. For a moment, the room was silent, and then it nodded. Slowly, it raised its hand and placed it over its chest. "Designation. Codename. Human," it said, its voice now in perfect English, though the tone remained otherworldly. The words sent a shiver through the room. Codename. Human. What did that mean? "What are you?" Dr. Voss asked cautiously, stepping forward. "I am a relic," it replied. "A weapon, created to protect, to destroy." The ambiguity in its answer only heightened the tension. Voss pressed further. "Protect from what? Destroy who?" The figure hesitated, as if trying to recall something buried deep in its memory. "The enemy. The Kalanok," it said finally. "They are coming." Before anyone could ask more, a surge of energy erupted from Codename. Human, disabling the lights and electronics in the chamber. Jake felt his hair stand on end as the air became heavy with static. The figure seemed to absorb the energy, its glowing eyes growing brighter. "They are close," it said, its tone grim. "This awakening has alerted them." Voss's face turned pale. "What have we done?" The scientists scrambled to restore power, their movements frantic. Jake, however, couldn't tear his eyes away from Codename. Human. There was something about the way it stood, a quiet confidence that seemed almost human. "What do you mean alerted them?" Jake asked, stepping closer. Codename. Human looked at him, the blue glow of its eyes dimming slightly. "The Kelnok are drawn to energy signatures like mine. My awakening will have been detected. They are a race of conquerors, relentless and unforgiving. They will come for this world." The room fell into a stunned silence. The weight of the words settled heavily on everyone's shoulders. Arcadia was no military stronghold. It was a mining colony with minimal defenses. If the Kellanok were as dangerous as Codename, Human suggested, they were all doomed. "But we didn't ask for this," one of the scientists blurted. "We didn't mean to awaken you." Codename. Human turned to the scientist, its expression unreadable. "Your intentions are irrelevant. The Kellanok do not discriminate. They consume. They destroy." Voss shook her head, trying to steady herself. "There has to be a way to stop them. You said you were a weapon, right? Can you fight them?" Codename. Human's gaze returned to the symbols on the walls. "I was created for that purpose," it said. "But I am incomplete. My power is limited, and I require resources to reach full capacity." "What kind of resources?" Voss asked. "Energy, technology, and trust," it replied, its glowing eyes meeting hers. Before anyone could respond, a piercing alarm rang out through the colony. A technician rushed into the chamber, his face pale with fear. "We've detected ships entering the system," he said, "unidentified and heading straight for Arcadia." The room erupted into chaos. Codename. Human remained calm, its voice cutting through the panic. "The Kellanok are here," it said. "Your survival depends on me. Decide quickly." Jake looked at the figure, his mind racing. He didn't trust it completely, but he knew one thing for sure. Without it, they didn't stand a chance. Dr. Voss turned to Codename. Human, her face set with determination. "What do we need to do?" The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and for the first time, it almost seemed to smile. "Prepared," it said. "For war." The rising threat. The tension in the colony was palpable. The arrival of unidentified ships sent waves of fear rippling through the inhabitants. For years, Arcadia had been a quiet outpost, far from the political and military struggles of the galaxy. Now, it stood on the brink of annihilation. In the command center, a holographic map displayed the incoming fleet. The ships were massive, with sleek, jagged designs that exuded menace. Their trajectory was direct, cutting through space with unnerving precision. Dr. Ilara Voss stood at the center of the chaos, her mind racing as the reality of the situation set in. Codename. Human stood beside her, an unmoving pillar of calm amidst the storm. Its glowing blue eyes flickered as it analyzed the data streaming across the holographic displays. "They're Kellanok, aren't they?" Voss asked, her voice tense. "Yes." Codename. Human replied. "Scout ships. They will test your defenses before sending the main fleet." "Test our defenses?" Voss scoffed. "We barely have any." Codename. Human turned to her, its expression unreadable. "Then your survival depends on speed and ingenuity." Meanwhile, Jake Carson had been quietly observing from the back of the room. He felt out of place among the scientists and military personnel, but something about Codename, Human, drew him in. He couldn't shake the feeling that their survival hinged on this strange being. "What do you need to help us?" Jake asked, stepping forward. Codename. Human's gaze shifted to him. "Access to your energy systems and control of your communication arrays. I must disrupt their signals and prepare countermeasures." The room went silent, granting Codename. Human such access was a gamble. The scientists exchanged uneasy glances, and one of the military officers stepped forward. "We don't even know if we can trust it," the officer said. "What if this thing is leading them here? What if it's the real threat?" Codename. Human's eyes glowed brighter. "If I were your enemy, you would already be destroyed," it said, its tone cold and final. Jake stepped closer to the officer, his voice firm. "We don't have time for this. If the Kellanok are as dangerous as it says, we need every advantage we can get." Reluctantly, Voss nodded. "Give it what it needs," she said. The scientists worked quickly, connecting Codename, Human, to the colony systems. As its metallic fingers interfaced with the consoles, streams of alien code flooded the screens. The lights dimmed as the energy redirected to fuel its actions. "They will reach the planet in 3 hours," Codename. Human announced. "I will disrupt their scanners, but it will only delay them. You must prepare your people to fight." Fight with what? Jake asked. We're miners, not soldiers. Codename. Human turned to him. You will fight with ingenuity and courage. I will provide the tools. It raised its hand, and the symbols etched into its body began to glow. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the room, displaying blueprints for weapons and defense systems. The designs were sleek and advanced, far beyond anything the colony had. These can be constructed using the materials in your minds. Codename. Human said. They are simple to assemble but effective against the Kalanok. The scientists and engineers got to work, using the blueprints to construct makeshift defenses. Jake joined them, his hands moving with purpose as he helped assemble the strange weapons. Despite the tension, there was a growing sense of determination. As the hours passed, Codename. Human continued to monitor the incoming fleet. Its calm demeanor belied the gravity of the situation. The Kalanok are relentless, it said to Jake during a brief moment of quiet. They do not stop until their enemy is destroyed or enslaved. Jake frowned. Why do they do this? What do they want? They seek domination. Codename. Human replied. They see other species as resources to be consumed. Your people will not survive without unity and sacrifice. The weight of those words settled heavily on Jake. He thought of his family back on Earth, the life he had struggled to build. He wasn't ready to give it all up, not without a fight. As the Kalanok fleet entered Arcadia's atmosphere, the first wave of attacks began. Sleek alien ships descended like predators, firing energy blasts that tore through the colony's outer defenses. The ground shook, and the air was filled with the sounds of explosions and screams. But this time, the colony wasn't defenseless. The makeshift weapons powered by Codename. Humans' designs fired back, emitting bursts of concentrated energy that pierced the Kalanok ships. One after another, the alien vessels fell from the sky, crashing into the barren terrain. Codename. Human stepped out onto the battlefield, its glowing eyes scanning the chaos. With a single gesture, it activated a shield that deflected incoming fire. Its presence was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a reminder of the power humanity had unleashed. The battle raged on, and though the colony managed to hold its ground, the cost was high. Buildings lay in ruins, and the screams of the wounded echoed through the air. But amidst the destruction, there was a flicker of hope. As the last of the Kalanok scouts were destroyed, Codename. Human turned to the survivors. This was only the beginning, it said. The main fleet will arrive soon. You have proven your resolve, but now you must prepare for the true test. Jake, battered and exhausted, looked at the figure. What's the plan? Codename. Human's eyes glowed brighter. We adapt. We fight. And we endure. Allies and betrayal. The victory over the Kalanok scout ships gave the colony a glimmer of hope, but it came at a steep cost. The outer defenses were in ruins, supplies were running low, and the survivors were exhausted. The colony's leaders convened an emergency meeting in the command center, their faces etched with fear and doubt. Dr. Ilara Voss stood at the head of the room, addressing the gathered crowd. Codename. Human loomed silently beside her, its glowing eyes scanning the tense expressions. We've bought ourselves some time, Voss began, her voice steady but strained. But the main fleet is on its way. Codename. Human has provided us with tools and strategies, but we can't do this alone. We need allies. The room erupted into murmurs. Jake Carson, sitting near the back, stood up. What allies? We're out here in the middle of nowhere. No one even knows we're under attack. That's not entirely true. Codename. Human interjected, its voice cutting through the noise. The energy surge from my awakening has drawn attention across the sector. There are others who may come, some to help, others to exploit. Your survival will depend on who you choose to trust. The idea of outsiders sparked heated debate. Some saw potential allies as a lifeline. Others feared that new arrivals would only bring more danger. As the colony wrestled with its decision, Codename, Human remained focused on the larger threat. Using its connection to the colony systems, it intercepted Kalanok communications. The invaders were regrouping, preparing a devastating attack. They will strike in waves. Codename, Human warned. The first is designed to cripple your defenses. The second will aim to capture survivors. That night, a sleek, unfamiliar ship landed outside the colony's perimeter. Its hull was battered, its engines sputtering. A group of humanoids emerged, scrappy, armed, and clearly experienced in battle. Their leader, a tall, scared woman named Kellerin, approached with cautious confidence. "We picked up your distress signal," Kellerin said, her sharp eyes scanning the gathered colonists. "We've fought the Kalanok before. If you let us in, we can help." Jake felt a surge of hope, but others were less trusting. "How do we know you're not here to take advantage of us?" a miner shouted from the crowd. Kellerin smirked. "You don't. But without us, you're as good as dead." The tension was palpable as Voss and Jake exchanged glances. Codename, Human stepped forward, its glowing eyes locking onto Kellerin. "You've faced the Kalanok," it said. "What did you learn?" Kellerin's smirk faded, replaced by a grim expression. "They're relentless, but they're not invincible. They rely on fear and chaos to break their enemies. If you can hold your ground long enough, they start to make mistakes." The colony reluctantly agreed to let Kellerin's crew in. The newcomers brought valuable experience in weaponry, but their arrival also sowed seeds of discord. The colony's limited resources were stretched even thinner, and suspicions ran high. One night, Jake overheard an argument between Kellerin and one of her crew members. "We can't stay here forever," the crew member hissed. "We need to take what we can and get out before the fleet arrives." Kellerin's response was quiet but firm. "We're not leaving these people to die." The conversation left Jake uneasy. He wanted to trust Kellerin, but the strain on the colony was growing. Meanwhile, Codename, Human worked tirelessly, integrating Kellerin's weaponry with the colony's makeshift defenses. It spoke little, but its presence was a constant reminder of the stakes. The cracks in the colony's unity deepened when a small group of colonists, led by a miner named Briggs, decided they'd had enough. "This isn't our fight," Briggs argued. "We're miners, not soldiers. I say we take the supplies and get out while we still can." Briggs's group sabotaged one of the power generators, plunging part of the colony into darkness. They planned to steal a transport ship and escape, but their actions left the defenses vulnerable. Jake discovered the sabotage and confronted Briggs in the hangar. "You're going to get us all killed," Jake shouted. "I'm trying to save my family." Briggs shot back. "This isn't worth dying for." Their argument was interrupted by an alarm. The Kalanok had launched a small, probing attack. The colony scrambled to respond, but the sabotage slowed them down. Codename, Human stepped into the chaos, its metallic body gleaming in the dim light. It moved with precision, intercepting the attackers and neutralizing them with ease. When the dust settled, it turned to the colonists. "This disunity will destroy you faster than any enemy," it said, its voice cold and sharp. Briggs and his group were subdued, but the damage was done. Trust among the colonists was fragile, and the Kalanok were growing closer. After the attack, Kellerin approached Codename, Human. "You're impressive," she admitted, "but you can't carry this fight alone." "No," Codename, Human replied, "but neither can you. If you hope to survive, you must unite. Trust is your greatest weapon, and your greatest weakness." As the colony prepared for the next wave, the tension between survival and betrayal loomed large. The Kalanok were coming, and the fragile alliance between the colonists and their new allies would soon be tested in ways no one could predict. The first strike. The air on Arcadia was heavy with tension as the warning sirens echoed through the colony. The Kalanok fleet had arrived in orbit, their shadowy ships blocking out the sun. The colonists braced themselves for what was to come, their makeshift weapons charged and their hastily built defenses humming with unstable energy. Codename. Human stood at the heart of the command center, its glowing blue eyes scanning the holographic displays of the approaching fleet. "They are positioning for a coordinated strike," it said, its voice steady. "They will target your central energy core first. Without it, your defenses will collapse." Dr. Ilara Voss nodded, her jaw tight with determination. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. What's the best way to counter their attack?" Codename. Human raised its hand, projecting a complex blueprint onto the main display. "Their ships rely on an adaptive shielding system. If we can disrupt the synchronization, their fleet will be vulnerable to sustained fire." "That's easier said than done," Jake Carson muttered, tightening the straps on his improvised body armor. "We're fighting with mining lasers and scrap metal." Kelleran stepped forward, her crew armed and ready. "That's why we're here. We've dealt with their shields before. The trick is hitting them hard and fast before they can adapt." The plan was set. Codename. Human would lead the charge, using its unique abilities to disable the Kalanox communications and shield synchronization. The colonists, alongside Kelleran's crew, would focus their fire on the weakened ships. As the Kalanox descended, the sky turned an unnatural shade of green, the light from their engines casting an eerie glow over the barren landscape. The first wave of attack ships broke through the atmosphere, their sleek forms darting toward the colony like predatory birds. "Hold your fire," Voss commanded over the comms. "Wait for the signal." Codename. Human stepped out onto the battlefield, its metallic form gleaming in the dim light. It raised its arms, and a pulse of blue energy radiated outward, disrupting the Kalanox communications. The alien ships faltered, their movements momentarily disjointed. "Now," Voss shouted. The colony's defenses roared to life. Energy cannons fired concentrated blasts, tearing through the weakened shields of the Kalanox ships. Explosions lit up the sky as the first wave was decimated, their burning remains crashing into the rocky terrain. Jake fought alongside the others, his hands trembling as he fired a modified mining laser. The recoil sent shockwaves through his body, but he pushed forward, his fear overshadowed by adrenaline. Kelleran's crew moved with precision, targeting the larger Kalanox ships with devastating efficiency. One of her gunners let out a triumphant cheer as a particularly massive vessel erupted into flames. But the victory was short-lived. The second wave of Kalanox ships descended, more numerous and heavily armed than the first. Their adaptive shields had recalibrated, and the colony's weapons struggled to penetrate them. "They're adapting faster than expected." Codename. Human warned. "We must disable their command ship to disrupt the fleet's coordination." "Where is it?" Voss asked, her voice tight. Codename. Human pointed to a massive, dagger-shaped ship hovering just beyond the battlefield. "There, but its shields are too strong for your weapons. I will have to infiltrate it directly." "You can't do that alone," Jake said, stepping forward. "I must," Codename. Human replied. "Their command structure is centralized. If I can neutralize their leader, the fleet will lose its coordination." Kelleran frowned. "That's a suicide mission." Codename. Human turned to her, its glowing eyes unwavering. "I was created for this purpose." Before anyone could protest further, Codename. Human launched itself into the air, propelled by bursts of energy from its hands and feet. It streaked toward the command ship, weaving through enemy fire with precision. On the ground, the battle raged on. The Kalanox pushed closer to the colony's perimeter, their relentless assault testing the limits of the defenses. Jake found himself in the thick of it, fighting alongside Kelleran and her crew. "We're not going to make it," a colonist shouted as an explosion rocked the ground nearby. "Yes, we will," Jake yelled back, firing another shot. "We have to." High above, Codename. Human breached the command ship's hull, its metallic form disappearing into the alien vessel. Inside, it moved with purpose, its sensors mapping the ship's layout. The corridors were lined with pulsating organic material, a grotesque fusion of flesh and technology. It reached the command center, where a towering Kalanok leader awaited. The creature was massive, its body encased in an armored exoskeleton. Its eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence as it turned to face Codename. Human. You are an anomaly. The Kalanok leader hissed, its voice resonating through the chamber. A relic of a forgotten war. You cannot stop us. I do not need to stop you, Codename. Human replied, its voice calm. I only need to delay you. With a sudden burst of speed, Codename. Human lunged at the leader, its movements a blur. The two clashed in a fierce battle, energy weapons slicing through the air. Codename. Human strategy was not to win but to overload the ship's systems, triggering a chain reaction that would disable the fleet. Back on the ground, the colonists and their allies were pushed to their limits. As hope began to wane, a brilliant explosion lit up the sky. The command ship erupted into flames, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The remaining Kalanok ships faltered, their movements disorganized. Seizing the opportunity, the colony's defenses launched a final assault, driving the invaders back. When the dust settled, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The Kalanok fleet had retreated, their command structure broken. Jake scanned the sky, searching for any sign of Codename. Human. Did it make it? He asked, his voice heavy with emotion. Voss shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We don't know. But deep in the wreckage of the command ship, a faint blue light flickered. Codename. Human's mission was not yet over. Sacrifice and revelation. The battlefield lay quiet, but the tension in the air was far from over. The Kalanok fleet had retreated, but everyone in the colony knew it wasn't a victory, only a brief reprieve. The massive explosion of the command ship had scattered debris across the barren landscape, and amidst the wreckage, a faint blue glow pulsed intermittently. Jake Carson refused to rest. He led a small team to the crash site, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. As they climbed over the twisted metal and alien remains, he spotted the source of the glow. Buried under rubble was Codename. Human, its metallic body battered and scorched, one arm completely missing. Get it out of there, Jake shouted, rallying his team. With great effort, they pulled Codename. Human free. Its glowing eyes flickered as it tried to move. Mission incomplete, it said in a distorted voice. Fleet regrouping. Jake knelt beside it. You did it. You gave us a chance. Now tell us what we need to do next. Codename. Human paused, its systems struggling to stabilize. The Kalanok fleet will return, it said. But the command ship's destruction has disrupted their timeline. You have days, not hours. They brought Codename. Human back to the colony, where Dr. Ilara Voss and the scientists worked tirelessly to repair it. As they reconnected its systems, Codename. Human revealed a truth that sent shockwaves through the room. I was not created by humanity, it said. I am the last weapon of the Edra, an ancient race that once ruled this galaxy. The Kalanok destroyed them centuries ago. My creators knew their time was over, so they built me to ensure the survival of future civilizations. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had stumbled upon not just a weapon, but a legacy of an extinct advanced species. Dr. Voss leaned forward, her face pale. Why were you left dormant? Why now? My creators calculated the Kalanok's resurgence. Codename. Human explained. I was designed to awaken when their threat became imminent. Your mining activity triggered my systems early. Wait, Jake interjected, his brow furrowed. If you were made by the Edra, how do you know our language? Our systems. Codename. Human turned its flickering gaze to him. I adapt. My design allows me to integrate with the technology and culture of the species I encounter. I was meant to guide you, to prepare you for what is to come. Dr. Voss's voice was a whisper. And what is to come? Codename. Human's answer was chilling. The Kalanok fleet you faced is only a fragment of their forces. The rest of their armada will arrive in weeks. Your current strength is insufficient to withstand them. Jake clenched his fists. Then we need to get stronger. What do we need to do? Codename. Human hesitated for the first time. There is one way, it said. I can collapse the Kalanok's wormhole gateway. Without it, their reinforcements will be cut off, and you will have a fighting chance. Dr. Voss frowned. How? What's the cost? Codename. Human's eyes dimmed slightly. I will need to overload my core. The energy required to destabilize their gateway will destroy me. No, Jake said immediately. There has to be another way. There is not. Codename. Human replied. My mission was always one of sacrifice. This is the only way to ensure your survival. The room was filled with silence, broken only by the hum of Codename. Humans' damaged systems. The colonists, exhausted and battered, gathered to hear the news. Some wept, others simply stared at the ground, unable to process the weight of the situation. Kelleran stepped forward, her expression grim. If we're going to do this, we need to make sure it works. No mistakes. Dr. Voss nodded. We'll help you stabilize your systems for the overload, but we need to act fast. As the scientists worked, Jake stayed by Codename. Human sighed. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I was created to do this. Codename. Human replied. But your actions will determine whether my sacrifice matters. You must unite your people, Jake. Without unity, the Kalanok will destroy you. Jake nodded, his throat tight. I won't let you down. The colony mobilized for the final mission. Codename. Human was equipped with additional energy conduits to amplify its core, and a small fleet of transport ships was prepared to escort it to the wormhole. The plan was simple. Codename. Human would deliver the overload, while the colonists and Kelleran's crew provided cover. As the countdown began, Codename. Human addressed the gathered crowd. Your strength is your resilience. Remember this. The Kalanok thrive on fear and division. Do not give them that power. Stand together. The colonists and their allies saluted, their faces a mixture of hope and sorrow. The final battle was about to begin. The final stand. The colony was quiet as the fleet of transport ships rose into the sky, carrying Codename. Human toward the Kalanok wormhole gateway. The glow of its energy core illuminated the interior of the lead ship, where Dr. Elara Voss, Jake Carson, and Kelleran stood alongside the humanoid weapon. Despite the hum of engines and the distant chatter of the escorts, there was an unspoken understanding that this mission was the colony's last chance for survival. Codename. Human. Its metallic body, still scarred from the previous battle, projected a holographic map of the wormhole. The gateway is heavily shielded, it explained. The Kalanok will deploy their forces to protect it. Disabling their defensive systems is critical before I can deliver the overload. Let's make sure we give you that opening, Kelleran said, loading her weapon. This is going to get messy. The ships emerged from Arcadia's atmosphere, their destination a glowing rift in space. The wormhole pulsed with malevolent energy, a swirling vortex of greens and blacks that seemed alive. Surrounding it was a Kalanok fleet, larger and more fearsome than anything the colonists had faced before. They're waiting for us, Voss muttered, staring at the enemy ships on the view screen. They fear what we can do, Codename. Human replied. That is to your advantage. As the fleet approached, the Kalanok forces surged forward, their ships swarming like locusts. The colony's escorts broke formation, engaging the enemy with everything they had. The void of space was soon filled with streaks of energy blasts and fiery explosions. Stick to the plan. Voss shouted over the comms. Focus fire on the shield generators. Kelleran's crew led the charge, their nimble ships darting between the Kalanok vessels. Jake manned a turret, his hand shaking as he fired round after round. Each hit on the Kalanok fleet sent a burst of adrenaline through him, but the enemy seemed endless. Generator spotted. Calrin's voice crackled through the comms. Moving to engage. Her crew unleashed a barrage of explosives, targeting a cluster of alien structures near the wormhole. One by one, the shield generators began to fail, leaving the gateway vulnerable. Inside the lead transport, Codename, Human began to glow brighter as its core charged. "The time is near," it said, its voice calm but final. "No," Jake said, gripping the edge of the console. "You don't have to do this. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." Codename, Human replied, turning to him. "This is my purpose. But you are the hope for what comes after. Lead your people, Jake." The ship shuddered as a Kalanok fighter struck its hull. Calrin's voice came over the comms. "We've got incoming. Protect the lead transport." The remaining escort ships formed a protective shield around the transport, absorbing fire from the Kalanok fleet. Despite their losses, they pushed forward, clearing a path to the wormhole. Codename, Human stepped toward the airlock. "The gateway must be neutralized from within. I will deliver the overload directly to its core." Voss placed a hand on its shoulder. "You've done more for us than we could ever repay." "You will repay me by surviving," Codename, Human said. With that, it stepped out into the vacuum of space, its body glowing like a star. Using bursts of energy from its core, it propelled itself toward the wormhole. Kalanok ships swarmed around it, but the remaining escorts fought valiantly to hold them off. "Go, you brilliant machine," Jake whispered, watching from the viewport. Codename, Human reached the edge of the wormhole, its core now blazing like a supernova. It extended its arms, and the swirling energy of the gateway began to ripple. "The overload will destabilize the gateway," it transmitted. "You must retreat to a safe distance." "But what about you?" Jake shouted over the comms. "I was never meant to survive this," Codename, Human replied. "Goodbye, Jake." The final burst of energy from Codename, Human's core was blinding, a brilliant flash that consumed the wormhole. The gateway collapsed in on itself, creating a shockwave that sent the Kalanok fleet spiraling into chaos. Ships exploded or drifted helplessly as their reinforcements were cut off. The colony's fleet, battered but alive, began to retreat. Jake stared out the viewport, his heart heavy. "It's gone," he whispered. "No," Voss said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's still with us, in everything it gave us." Back on Arcadia, the colonists gathered to honor Codename, Human's sacrifice. The battle had forged them into something stronger, a united force capable of standing against any threat. As Jake looked up at the night sky, he saw a faint glimmer, a shard of Codename, Human's core, drifting through the heavens like a silent guardian. And somewhere in the depths of space, the legacy of the Edra lived on, their weapon fulfilling its purpose, leaving humanity with the strength to endure.